Baby, can you dig your man? He's a righteous man. Baby, can you dig your man? Alright guys, welcome to a book review on Stephen King's epic post-apocalyptic novel, The Stand. By the way, the song in the intro there is Baby, Can You Dig Your Man by the band Self. I'll put the link for the song down in the description for those of you that are interested. The way that this novel came to be is a story in and of itself. In the late 1960s, Stephen King got an idea that he wanted to write a long novel about a journey that was in the spirit of The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. However, he couldn't quite figure out how he wanted to write it, not sure what he wanted it to be about. While he was watching the news with his family in Boulder, Colorado in the mid-70s, they watched a news segment called 60 Minutes, and on that program, there was a piece about biological warfare, and this set the gears turning in Stephen King's mind, and he began writing The Stand. Most of you know that there are two different versions of this novel, but there are actually three different versions. When King completed the manuscript for it back in the late 70s, his publishers said no way. It was too long. It would never go over in the market of that time. And King took it upon himself to edit it down. He took around 400 pages out of the book, and they published it in '78 as The Stand. 2 years later, in 1980, the paperback came out, and it was changed. The timeline was changed. They updated it from 1980, the time period for the original version, to 1985, I guess to keep it current for the modern audience with the paperback. When King completed the uncut edition later on in his career, after he had some success, he published the novel almost as it originally was. He, however, changed the order of the chapters. He changed some cultural references to keep it current. Madonna is a reference in the book. He also changed the timeline again from 1985 to 1990. So we have the original, the updated timeline with the paperback version, and the complete uncut edition, which takes place in 1990. Now, what is this book about? This is a post-apocalyptic piece, and it takes place in the United States. Rather than having a hobbit as the lead character, we have a man named Stu Redman. Rather than the Dark Lord Sauron, we have Randall Flagg playing the demon in this one. And rather than it taking place in Middle-earth and the Shire and Mordor, we have the United States. Boulder, Colorado takes the place of the Shire, basically, and Mordor is in Las Vegas. In this book, a government-created superflu, a biological weapon, is accidentally released out into the community in the United States. It takes over the entire world and kills 99% of the entire human population, as well as many animals. The survivors are apparently immune. There are some people that survive this, and they start having strange dreams. Some of them dream about an old woman named Mother Abigail who lives in an old house in a cornfield, and they feel drawn toward her, almost in a religious fervor. They feel that they must seek her out. She's calling to them in their dreams. On the other side of the coin, we have the demon Randall Flagg, who is causing dreams of his own. And people are dreaming about him, the bad guys in this novel, and they're drawn toward him in Las Vegas, where he's set up for his final stand. It's essentially a novel of good versus evil. We have Mother Abigail on one hand, who represents God and the people that are with her, and we have Randall Flagg, who represents Satan and the people that are with him. And like the Lord of the Rings, there's a long journey involved in this, which is really the heart of the plot. It's very Lord of the Rings-like in that manner. Our group of good people have to travel to Mother Abigail, many states across in the United States, and make their way to Boulder, Colorado, where they set up their base. And of course, we have Randall Flagg in Las Vegas, and the people that choose to side with him have to make their way across the United States to be part of his party. Pros and cons. I have some pros here and some cons. Let's start with the pros. The characters are the best thing about this novel. We have Stu Redman, who is the blue-collar worker. He's the guy that tries to do right by everyone. He's the type of person you might go to if you need advice, and he's also kind of an authority figure. We have Nick Andros, who is a deaf mute, and he is probably the most morally competent person in the book. He truly is a shining light, is Nick Andros, and I loved his character. He was really fun to read about. I love his introduction into the story and how he works at the jail, and people just love Nick Andros. We have Tom Cullen, who's basically the personification of innocence, and it was very interesting to read about his story. Moon spells Tom Cullen. He was a very fascinating character study, and I love the fact that he played a big role in this book. Tom Cullen is all throughout it, and I just love his character in this novel. We have Frannie, who plays a very important role in the book. She ends up becoming companions with Stu Redman, and one of the great parts of this book for me was the fact that Stu Redman, he loved Frannie and he really cared about Frannie's baby, which Frannie was impregnated by someone else before she met Stu. And it really is a testament to Stu's character that he was invested in the child. I think that's an extremely admirable fact in life when that kind of thing happens. And I just loved Stu Redman for that. He really loved Frannie, and their relationship's one of the best parts in this book. We also have Larry Underwood, the pop sensation. Baby, can you dig your man? He's a righteous man. Larry Underwood is a pop singer who's finally made his break into the musical world. He has a hit song. He's a one-hit wonder only because he doesn't have enough time to make another song before the world goes to hell. But his song's all over the radio when the super virus hits the world. And I love to see the development of his character as well. I think he grows a lot in this book. Harold Lauder. I'll mention Harold Lauder here. Harold Lauder is the character that probably grows the most throughout this book. He's the geeky nerd who's been bullied all of his life. He just hates his life, basically. And when the end of the world comes around, it's Harold Lauder's time to thrive. And it's very interesting to see the changes in his personality over time. He experiences heartbreak in the book, and it turns him. Temptation is a big theme in this novel that Harold Lauder has to deal with. And I'll also mention Nadine Cross here. I loved Nadine. She's the sexy woman that is also just basically insane. And she's probably corrupted by power more than anyone in this book, is Nadine Cross. She's literally the lover of Randall Flagg. They're intimate partners. And I thought that she was very well done by King. I just can't say enough about how much time King spends working these characters up. You know, you kind of create a friendship with the characters in a book when you're reading a book, especially of this length. You know, in a normal length novel, 300-400 pages, you get to know characters. An author can generate a few really good characters in that kind of page count. But when you have a book this big, you can really get into characterization and building up the characters and their backgrounds, their histories. It really is a lovely characterization by King here. I think that's why people love reading epic fantasy, because the stories are so long that you get to know the people in them. And that is probably, in fact, I'm certain that getting to know the personalities in this book is the absolute best part of it. I really liked the relationship between Larry Underwood and his mother. You know, it just goes to show that people can grow up and become adults, and their parents still know who they are. Larry Underwood's mother knows that he's a selfish person, and Larry grows throughout the novel. He becomes someone better than he was at the beginning, but I really liked it when Larry was taking money out of his mother's purse to go see a movie. He basically returned to his childhood self when he met back up with his mother toward the beginning of the novel. And I thought that King was just brilliant when he played on that relationship. It really is a testament to how well Stephen King understands different kinds of people in the world and how relationships work. You know, you don't necessarily have to have experienced something yourself to see how it works. And I loved Larry's relationship with his mother. I also loved Frannie's relationship with her parents. It's one of the best parts of the book. Her father really loves her, and I love when he sticks up for her. He actually smacks his wife to put her in line when Frannie's in crisis and she needs help. She needs to be able to lean on her parents, and her mother rejects her. Her father steps in on her behalf, and I just loved that. It was one of my favorite parts of the book. And I also loved the relationship between Harold and Nadine. I liked how she came to manipulate him. I thought it was a good play on selfishness and greed when Harold Lauder and Nadine came together in the book. I thought that it was really a fresh perspective on Harold's character. I did not expect this. You see, Harold has never had a woman in his life, and I didn't expect that he would. When he was rejected by Frannie, that was like the last woman in the world wouldn't accept him. But Nadine comes across for her own selfish reasons on the behalf of Flagg, and I felt that their relationship was very good. And I loved all the relationships in this book. I just thought that they were some of the best character relationships that I've ever read. On the other side, we have Randall Flagg, who is a low-level demon from hell. He's basically a henchman of Satan, and it's his prerogative to try to wreck the world in this novel. You see, there are basically two antagonists here. We have the Superflu, which might be the primary antagonist in the book. It's killed almost everyone on Earth. And Randall Flagg sees an opportunity here, with everything in chaos, to try to take over the world. He tries to do it in the eyes of the dragon. This is a common theme for Randall Flagg, to try to take over civilization and just run it into the ground. We also have Lloyd, who plays Randall Flagg's right-hand man in this, basically. Lloyd is a career criminal. He's a maniac. And Randall Flagg saves him. You see, he finds Lloyd in jail, Flagg does. Lloyd is in jail for murder, and he's in jail when the Superflu hits, and the guards die, everyone dies. He's stuck in his jail cell, eating another human body to try to stay alive. And Flagg comes to him and lets him out of the jail. He saves Lloyd's life. And Lloyd is committed to him because of that fact. And I think it was a really brilliant setup by King here, building Randall Flagg's compatriot here, his right-hand man. And I think that Lloyd worked very well for that. However, speaking of maniacs, I'll mention one more character here on the side of bad, and that is Trashcan Man, who is a fascinating character study. Trashcan Man, kind of like Harold Lauder, is someone who was picked on his whole life. He came to have a lot of resentment within him, like Harold Lauder did. I see a lot of parallels between their characters. And Trashcan Man is fascinated with fire. As a young person, he would just set things on fire. Mailboxes, trash cans, you name it, he would set it on fire. He was a firebug, an arsonist, a pyromaniac, if you will. And Flagg appreciates that quality within him. And Flagg calls him through dreams to Las Vegas. And Trashcan Man, I don't know if I should say he's the most interesting character here or not. I think that belongs to Tom Collin, really, if you ask me. But Randall Flagg maybe the most interesting. But I liked Trashcan Man as well. I thought that his character was very well done, and I was really into his fascination with fire. I thought that it was one of the best parts of this book, especially when Trashcan Man's obsession with fire and destructiveness plays a role at the very end of the book. So the characters are gold here, guys. They're right up there with the Losers Club. They're right up there with the characters in The Body or Stand By Me. They're right up there with the Dark Tower characters. Now, I will say that I like the Dark Tower character set better. I liked the Losers Club better. I even like the characters in The Body better. But the fact that I'm associating these characters with those ones says a lot about how good they are. Another pro here is the journey. You know, I'm someone that likes to read science fiction, space opera, and epic fantasy where there's this huge journey that plays out. I just love those setups for a novel plot. And that happens here. King was going for it. He wanted it to be Lord of the Rings-like, and we get that here. People are in different states throughout the United States, and they have to make their way across the land to Mother Abigail. They have to make their way from her to Boulder, Colorado. The bad guys have to make their way all the way out to Las Vegas with Randall Flagg, and I really enjoyed the journey. The journey does come into this review in the cons section as well, but for the most part, I liked it, and that's where King gets to do his characterization, is over this long journey, the relationships involved. You see, they have to depend on one another to make it in this really chaotic world. And the streets are just filled with cars, dead people everywhere. Their cars just abandoned. So you can't just get in a car and drive down the road in this book. You've either got to use a motorcycle or a bicycle because of the traffic jams, or you've got to walk. A lot of this book plays out where characters are walking. I liked toward the end where Tom Collin was walking with Stu. I liked everything to do with Tom Collin in this book. I'm hesitant to say he was my favorite part, but I just can't say enough about how much I like the journey and the descriptions involved. King really did a lot of research about the environments here, the different cities and what they're like and what people are like in them. So I'm putting the journey itself in the pro section for this review. Concerning the good qualities of the book, I was actually taking notes as I was reading, and I'd like to read one paragraph for you directly from my notes. The writing is vivid. I don't know enough about language to be specific, but I could see it clearly. This is a mark of a master storyteller. This pulls you in. Usually when I'm reading, I'm kind of judging how I'm enjoying the plot. However, I can be so pulled in, like a movie in my mind's eye, that I forget about whether I'm enjoying it or not. I become one with the story. Another pro here are the themes that King touches on throughout the book. We have themes like temptation. How do you resist the call of a devil in this book? And, the characters in this novel have to fight their own internal battles. Not only do they have to deal with this superflu and Randall Flagg, they have personal issues they're dealing with, their own histories, their own psychologies. I thought it was very good, and King introduces a lot of temptation in this book. Harold Lauder has to deal with temptation and his own internal hate for the world. Nadine Cross has to deal with temptation. And I like that theme in the novel. I think it works well. Human nature is another theme, and I don't know how Stephen King has come to know so much about human psychology. It really is a study in societies and relationships. When you read a Stephen King novel like this, especially a long one like The Stand or It with the Losers Club, human nature is dark, and this is a dark novel. It's kind of a dark post-apocalyptic horror / maybe fantasy novel. There are some fantasy elements in it, but human nature is on full display here in this book, and it's a very interesting thing to read about. The dangers of science and technology are here as well. Stephen King asks the question in this book, what happens if there's some kind of great disaster and some people are left over and most of the people die? What are they going to do? What would they do in that situation? He plays with that idea here. Well, maybe they would group together. Would there be lawlessness? What would be the best way to go about reestablishing a society? And he even introduces a sociologist as a character in this novel to play on the theme of societies and rebuilding. Glenn Bateman is the sociologist here, and I love that fact. King brings him into the plot to play with the social philosophy in this book, and I think that was really good. But King talks about the dangers of weapons, for everything from firearms to atomic bombs in this book. He asks, not directly, but indirectly, is advanced technology good for us in the long run? Could it hurt us in the long run? Could it be the end of us in the long run? Can we use it for evil, like creating a superflu to kill off everyone on Earth? Are the bombs that we build going to be the end of us? I think that he ruminates on science and technology really well here, and it really is something to think about. And religion is a big theme here. This is a religiously based book. King calls it a dark tale of Christianity, where we have a human representative of God, Mother Abigail, going against the supernatural representative of Satan in Randall Flagg. And it was really interesting, I thought, the way that all that comes together. It really wasn't overdone with biblical passages or anything. There was some of that, but I thought it was an appropriate amount of it in the novel. And I thought that religion worked well here. And we also have perseverance. Perseverance is one of my favorite things. I love perseverance. And imagining myself being thrown into this kind of chaos, like the end of the world playing out, it makes me wonder, how well would I persevere? Because the characters are going up against a lot in this novel. They're dealing with the flu. They're dealing with Randall Flagg. They're dealing with Harold Lauder and Nadine. They're dealing with betrayal in this book and their own human limitations. And I think that King works perseverance in a way that's believable. And I thought that it was a really genuine take on perseverance, because not everyone perseveres in this book. Some people succumb to temptation, their own personal desires, the fact that they just can't take what's going on. Let's talk about a couple of cons here before I move on to where this fits in the Stephen King multiverse and its relation to the Lord of the Rings epic. One of the cons, and the most common problem that people have with this book, is the pacing. I myself was into it big time for the first 600 pages, and it does seem like there's a spot in the middle where it slows down. I didn't feel as though it was becoming painful to read it, but I did feel as though I was less enthusiastic about reading it. In the middle, the book's separated into 3 different parts, and the middle part can be a bit of a grind. You see, as they're making their way toward Mother Abigail in Boulder, Colorado, there comes a part where they set up the free zone, where they're trying to rebuild society, and it felt like King dropped the ball building suspense in this book for just a little while. I felt that it recovers good as the novel comes in toward the end with a 3rd section. But I will say that I understand where people are coming from when it comes to the lack of pacing in parts of this novel. I know that there are basically 3 groups of people. People who just loved this book, people who had problems with the pacing, but they finished it, and people who could not finish it because of the lack of pacing. And I get that. For me personally, I thought it was a good book overall, but I'm empathetic to the fact that people struggled a bit in the novel. And also the ending was very weird for me. King has been criticized throughout the years for having unusual, not fitting endings for some of his books. And I was a bit disgruntled about how quickly things come to an end. It also seemed kind of nonsensical to me because, spoiler alert, spoiler alert, spoiler alert, at the end of the book, the hand of God comes down and causes the nuclear device that is brought in by Trashcan Man. Really weird with Trashcan Man. It seems like Trashcan Man's going to be a really good addition to Flagg's army, but Trashcan Man starts killing people, and he brings a bomb in that ends up being the end of the whole operation. But the hand of God comes in and causes that nuclear weapon to go off, ending the resistance out in Las Vegas. And the reason it seems kind of nonsensical to me is because, what was the purpose of Stu Redman and everyone that went out there, Glenn Bateman? What was the purpose of them going out there if they weren't really going to have a hand in how things ended? Because they didn't really do anything at the end of the book. They were about to be killed when finally God comes in at the end and puts an end to the shenanigans out there in Sin City. I thought that was rushed. I wonder if King just was struggling to figure out a really fitting ending to the whole thing. I thought that Tolkien did a great job wrapping up the Lord of the Rings epic, because it would be a challenge as an author to cleanly and tightly bring everything together at the end of a really long epic novel and have a satisfying ending for everyone involved. That would be tough. But I just felt that this ending was an absolute mess. 2 things I want to add here, guys, as far as problems I see with the book. 1, the novel takes place in the United States, and we're never told much about what happens outside of the United States. Let's say that Flagg would have been successful, destroying civilization in the United States. Would he then have moved on to China and Europe and Africa, making his rounds around the world, crushing everyone left? I would have maybe liked a little bit more about what was happening outside the borders of the United States, even Canada and Mexico and South America, but we don't get anything. The other thing I have here is, at the end of the book, Flagg is back. We don't know how much time has passed by since he's been defeated in Las Vegas, but he's basically around some tribes people. He comes back to, he basically regenerates, and they're worshiping him. And I'm wondering, has like 6 months passed by here? Is our group of characters, Stu and Frannie, are they going to have to deal with him again? Is he on his way back? If they defeat him again, will he come back 6 months later yet again? So I guess those are some things that weren't really tied up at the end that I'm still curious about. And I just wanted to get those thoughts here in the video. Where does The Stand fit in the Stephen King multiverse at large? Well, for one thing, it has an intimate role, an intimate connection with the Dark Tower series by Stephen King. Keep your eyes peeled when you read the Dark Tower series. Not only does Randall Flagg show up in the Tower series, but The Stand has something else to do with the Tower books, so you will enjoy that if you've read The Stand and you're going into the Dark Tower series. That's one of the biggest things I see here, and many people consider this to be Stephen King's magnum opus. I see 2 big novels and a series when I think Stephen King and his great accomplishments. We have The Stand, we have It, Stephen King's 2 longest novels, and we have the Tower series, which connects basically everything. And Randall Flagg is a recurring character. This is the introduction to Flagg. This is basically Flagg's novel here. But he also plays a very important role in The Eyes of the Dragon, an Arthurian tale, where he plays the evil Merlin. He also shows up as the antagonist in Gwendy's Button Box. He also shows up, as you probably know, in the Dark Tower series by Stephen King. So there's a lot of influence on Stephen King's works as a whole when it comes to this specific novel. When it comes to The Lord of the Rings, I definitely see the influence. In fact, King brings The Lord of the Rings up more than several times in this book. It's really interesting, it's all about a fellowship that comes together around a kind of magical personality. Mother Abigail, Gandalf, and they go on a long trip across the land to fight evil in the land of darkness. And it really is kind of a direct comparison there. You can see it. It's a no-brainer. Not only does King tell us that this is his version of The Lord of the Rings, by the way, the Dark Tower series is also his version of The Lord of the Rings. So it's clear to see that the Lord of the Rings epic has had a huge impact on Stephen King. He's a big fan of it. He absolutely loves it. And he's recreated it himself twice now with The Stand and the Dark Tower series. But as you go through the novel, you'll pick up on things that are directly from the Dark Tower series, like the trolls in the mountains that are mentioned in The Stand, directly from The Lord of the Rings. I think Stu Redman is Frodo Baggins. Maybe I'm wrong here. I had some troubles figuring out which characters were supposed to be a play on which characters. Some were more obvious than others, like Mother Abigail representing Gandalf. At least I think I've got that right. Let me know if I'm wrong in the comments, but I think that if you've ever read The Lord of the Rings and you then read The Stand, or maybe the reverse of that, maybe you read The Stand first and then you read The Lord of the Rings, you're going to see a lot of parallels and influence between the 2 novels. Talk about outside influences, I want to tell you about The Fireman and how it plays into Stephen King's The Stand. I read a novel, a post-apocalyptic novel, called The Fireman by Joe Hill. Now, if you don't know, Joe Hill is Stephen King's son. Joe Hill wanted to write his own version of The Stand by Stephen King. So he wrote his own apocalyptic piece, massive novel like The Stand. And while I was reading it, I found that there were tons of literary references in Joe Hill's The Fireman. And I wondered if that was a play on Stephen King's The Stand, because I hadn't read it yet. When I read The Stand, I realized that fact, the fact that Joe Hill mentioned so many novels inside of his The Fireman, it was in fact influenced by The Stand. I wrote down every literary reference that I came across in The Stand that I caught, and I must have about 100 of them. It really is incredible. And as a book lover, I loved the fact that King mentioned so many. I'll read just a few here. The Time Machine comes into The Stand. Charlotte's Web, The Wizard of Oz, Camus, Milton, Brave New World, Alice in Wonderland, the Ed McBain Detective Series novels, The Wizard of Oz, The Lord of the Rings, Faulkner, and so many more. I could go on, but the reader in me loved that fact. When it comes to adaptations, I have not seen the new updated 2020 miniseries. I am interested in checking that out to see how closely it follows the plot. I have seen the 1994 miniseries. I actually watched it years ago. It's been a while now, but I thought that the guy that played Randall Flagg, Jeremy Sheridan, did a good job playing Randall Flagg in that novel. In the miniseries rather. I couldn't help picturing him in my mind as I read the novel version. And Gary Sinise is his name. The man that played Stu Redman did a spot-on job for Stu Redman, in my opinion. I thought he was very, very good in that old miniseries. Maybe I'll have to watch that again. I know that there are some differences between the novel and the 94 miniseries. One I'll mention is the fact that in the novel, the citizens, the people that are in Las Vegas with Randall Flagg, they're afraid of Flagg. They don't necessarily support him, but they do out of fear. And they're kind of passive at the end of the novel where everything plays out, where the stand takes place. However, in the miniseries version, they're reckless. They're like a brutal mob that support Randall Flagg. They just love the guy. They're reckless and crazy and maniacal. And that was a difference. Not that that's really a big deal. It's been so long since I've seen it, but I do recommend the 94 miniseries if you're a fan of the book, and I personally can't wait to check out the new miniseries now that I finally got this book under my belt. My final Ruminations. This was a good book. It was my 51st completed Stephen King read. And there was a lot that I liked about it. Some that I didn't. I think that the characters will stay with me for a long time. I loved Nick Andros and Tom Collin and Frannie and Stu Redman. I loved Harold. I loved Flagg and Trashcan Man. You know, this is without a doubt one of the best sets of characters that Stephen King has ever developed. I'm not necessarily sure if I would put this in my top 10 King books that I've read. There was a part in this book that was kind of hard for me, where it slowed down in the middle. I also think that it was a better read. I thought that the characters were better overall. I thought that the idea for the plot was much better in it. But overall, this was a good book. You know, I think I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10, which would mean it's a recommended book from me. I highly encourage you to read it if you haven't already. If you're afraid of the length, give it a shot. I think that it's a book that will be likely to pull you in. It definitely pulled me in. It starts with a bang. I like how this book starts with Captain Trips and the fact that Stu and his friends are at the gas station and the car comes in and hits the gas pump. The world's come to an end. It really is kind of an exciting read because of that, even though it's on the dark side of things. I thought that it was a good book with good themes. I know that King must have spent many hours thinking about the personalities he wanted to create here and the conflicts that they were going to have to deal with. When an artist creates a piece of artwork, be it a novel or a painting or a musical piece, you can tell when someone puts their all into it, when someone cares about what they're doing. And even though there were some parts in this book that were a little hard for me, like the pacing and the ending, overall I thought that it was a brilliant piece of work and I highly recommend it. And there it is, guys, my review of The Stand by Stephen King. I'm happy that I finally got this very important piece of the Stephen King multiverse finished up. Let me know what you all think of The Stand. Let me know what you liked about it. Let me know what you disliked about it down in the comments below. Put a like on this video, please, if you enjoyed it. Thanks for joining me, everyone. Constant readers, tower junkies. May you have long days and pleasant nights, my friends.